ahead and I put in all of our units in Canvas for the year, or in Atlas rather, I'm sorry, for the year. MEM being for the whole year, but everything else I pretty much staggered. I know we can change that as we go. But I feel like we need to sit down and plan our second unit.
Yeah.
And we don't usually do this before. This is kind of new for us to use Atlas as our place for our UBD to plan our units out.
Right.
So let's go into where it says Unit 2, the value of voice.
Okay.
The first thing we need to think about is all of these standards. Yeah. So there's a lot. So I think what I was doing wrong in the past is I was just tagging everything that I wanted the kids to do in that unit.
Right.
But what we really need to focus on is what do we want the kid, what do we actually think we're going to be teaching and assessing in this next unit as we're teaching Brown Girl Dreaming. And we have 5 different strands. We have reading,
writing, listening, speaking, language.
Okay, so these, I went ahead and I tagged some of the ones that I think that we're going to target,
Okay.
but I feel like I've tagged too many.
Okay. So I feel like we should definitely focus on argumentative writing because we know that we have to cover it in this trimester. We all have to cover argumentative writing. So maybe we just focus on ones that we think really tackle that for this unit
Okay.
and pull out some of the things that we don't necessarily work.
Okay.
Do you think we're doing determine a theme, the RL2?
I don't think so.
Okay. So
I think we're gonna teach that more maybe with To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah. So let's take that out.
Okay.
Textual evidence, RL1 is for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
I feel like we're gonna end up doing RL1 in every single unit this year.
Yeah. So maybe because this is our first official one, we keep it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Analyze dialogue and incidents, propel the action, reveal aspects of character, or provoke a decision. I tag that as a possibility for a reading standard, but do you think we're gonna actually want to teach and assess that one here?
Do you think when we're analyzing speeches for the argumentative, that's something we might do, or is this just for stories?
I think this is just in the reading literature with Brown Girl Dreaming. So I don't actually know if we're gonna do that. But should we?
We might want to, because think about it, if we're doing like how can we use our voices to affect change? How does Jacqueline use her voice to affect change? Doesn't that propel actions? Reveal
Yes.
parts of her as a character?
It does.
Provoke a decision.
So then
I like this standard. I
I
feel like
actually-
we should use this.
Yeah, I actually do too.
Okay, so let's keep that.
Okay. So RL4 analyze the impact of specific word choice on meaning and tone.
Yes.
We want to be doing that in Brown Girl Dreaming because then we want them to be able to apply that in their argumentative
Argumentative,
writing.
for
But
sure.
it also says allusions to other
Allusions,
texts.
which we want to teach too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, so that's 4 writing standards. Is that too many?
Tears of Deval. No, I think that. No, I think we're going to be doing all these.
Do you think we're going to teach and assess this? Because I think if we're not teaching it, we shouldn't assess it.
Right.
Like, are we going to be teaching, revising, and editing?
Yes.
Okay, so then let's leave that one in there. Okay, the listening and speaking ones, I have way too many in here.
Yeah.
We cannot teach and assess all of these.
Okay.
So what, as we're, we did the debate protocol in our last unit. Do you want to teach Socratic seminar in this unit?
Yeah, I think we should do Save the Last Word for Me protocol, Socratic seminar, maybe just stick with 2, maybe 3 tops,
Okay.
discussion protocols.
Okay, let's think about sticking with those 2.
Okay.
But I actually feel like a lot of these listening and speaking standards are going to be analyzing speeches to prepare them for what we want them to do in their argumentative writing.
Right.
So
I think we're looking at LS1A, or are we looking at all of these?
well, that's the thing. We don't have to choose all of these.
So I think they're definitely doing LS1A,
Okay.
and
I actually think they're doing all of these things in the Socratic seminar.
they are. Yes.
Is it okay if we don't grade these summatively, if these are just formative activities, if they're targeted in this unit?
I think so, as long as they're on the rubric that we're giving their peers when they track each other at the seminar.
And then we can
And
give,
this can help teach them, okay, so your partner's looking, are you posing questions that connect ideas for speakers, and are you responding to others' questions and comments? So I think these will be really great for formative tracking,
okay. So
for
even,
discussion.
so these are things I think we're not going to summatively assess, but
No.
I think we can formatively assess them.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think the next two listening and speaking standards have to do with analyzing speeches, but then LS4 and LS6 is about them and their own individual speech that they'll be giving at the end of the trimester.
Right.
So I do think we need to keep those here.
Yes.
But I do think that LS2 and LS3 may be formatively assessed, not summatively assessed.
Yeah.
Is that
Because
okay?
those are with our writing workshops on Fridays.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so then
Okay.
language foundations, we want to do those within our literacy stations on Thursdays on our grammar days.
Right.
So active and passive voice, I definitely want to get to this trimester.
Yes, that's, we talked about next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Using punctuation to indicate a pause or break. I feel like we need to review with some kids individually comma
Yeah.
usage, but
I think that
it-
will be helpful for their speech when they're giving it also.
yeah,
Where
and
they have to use it to help them
pause.
pause while they're speaking.
Okay. And then the application of that is using verbs in the active passive voice.
Yeah.
You and I like to use our essential questions for the entire unit,
Yeah.
so tell me what you're thinking.
So I think if we're going to do an argumentative stance speech as our end task, we should talk about voicing and how they're going to use their voice for change, and maybe that could be like our overarching essential question. And then we continue using some of the ones that we've done last year about, sharing stories, U.S. policies pertaining to race. I think we can kind of keep those, pull that new one, and keep.
If you were going to explain to someone, like a kid, what's the purpose of an essential question, besides just putting up on our board every day, what would you say?
That they're answered by the end of the unit, hopefully through the reading, through their activities, and that usually what we do is that's kind of their end task is picking one of those questions to then come up with a writing form. So I think if we're going to write argumentatively, they're going to use their voices for change and tie in all the essential questions and what they've kind of been annotating and reading based on the questions. So I know like when they're reading for our yellow analysis, instead of just saying read between the lines, they have to not only do that, but they have to tie one of the essential questions to their analysis, because then they're analyzing how are we going to answer this question by the end of the unit.
I want to show people what I've been doing with this content and realize that what I've been doing is really totally wrong. But that's okay, like I went to this Atlas conference and I learned some things. So I feel kind of good about that. So I know with my English department, I'd asked you guys to do this template, and I realized I'm just gonna totally scratch that. So I'm gonna go in here as Dana's putting in our essential questions and just kind of talk about what content is. This is what students will know. And in Atlas, we need to be able to search content from one to the other, and so in our department, it should really look very similar. And it should match up with our standard strands up here.
Yeah.
So I feel like what we need to start with is our core text,
Yeah.
what our supplementary texts are, and then like
Maybe the standards.
the,
Yeah.
the standard strands. Reading literature. Do we want to put reading information? We didn't have that up here. Or is that not something we're really focusing on in this unit?
No, with all the standards you say are reading literature.
Okay.
So,
So reading literature, writing,
and
listening, speaking,
and then the
language,
language
foundation.
foundations, yeah.
So everybody's should look like this in
Mhm.
every single English department
Yeah.
content.
I think that's even easier than the template. Yeah.
Because if I want to know when do they learn commas, I should be able to search that and find that really quick.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we look at reading literature and we're looking up at our standards up here, we just want to like take these standards up here and just put them down into like a couple little words. So
Okay.
like text evidence, inferences,
So-
dialogue.
Okay. So reading literature would be citing textual evidence.
Yep.
Drawing inferences. Analyzing dialogue. But it says here analyzing dialogue that reveals aspects of characters. So do you want?
So maybe we could just say characterization.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
I know they study that a lot in 7th grade, but it would be a good review, I think, for them. They don't all get it.
Yeah. Word choice on meaning and tone.
So maybe like
Would we want to add allusions?
word choice, tone, definitely allusions in Brown Girl Dreaming.
Okay.
And if I look back up here, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we need to
Perfect.
make sure we're teaching and covering these pieces of content.
And that's way easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is making me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Okay, so for writing,
Okay, so let's look at the writing. So, arguments to support claims.
so how about claim? Like, what's a claim?
Yeah.
Like an arguable
Yeah.
claim.
Valid reasoning and relevant evidence. Do we want to add that?
Commas, ellipses.
And it says
Dashes. Okay,
Do we want to add numbing or any vocabulary?
I
for
do
any of
feel
this?
like that's not,
Not-
that's not, like, we have our membeing unit in
Okay.
Atlas,
Right.
so,
But it's a known thing that we use it throughout.
right,
Or should we add it under key terms? Like,
membeing vocab,
yeah, right? They need to use it. We want them to be using that persuasive language
Right.
in the stance speech so they can pull persuasive words from membing.
true. So this skills part, I don't wanna spend too much time on, but because I think we can go back and do this.
Okay.
In some departments, they really have to unpack these benchmarks. Ours are pretty much the skills.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like to think about, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this section right here, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna copy it over to skills. This is like, as they're learning this content, what are they
What
actually
skills
able to do
do.
in terms of reading literature?
Okay.
And so, you know how I always put a learning target, and I know you do too, on your board?
Yeah.
It's almost like we're taking the benchmark and putting it in a kid-friendly language, like, what can the
Gotcha.
kids do?
Gotcha.
And so what we wanna be doing, that should match up with our content on the left.
Okay.
So like, cite textual evidence that supports claim.
Mm-hmm.
What are the kids able to do? They're able to draw inferences about what? About
The reading or
the plot, about the
Okay.
characterization, or dialogue, right?
mm-hmm.
So analyze dialogue, why? In
For
order,
validity.
well, what did we say up in
credibility?
the standard up here?
It said analyze how particular lines of dialogue
Read
in
your
a
character.
story reveal aspects of character or decisions. So characterization
I think we're gonna see evidence of these things.
in their annotations.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. In their thinking maps.
So I feel like in a way these things are repetitive, but this is helping me kind of figure out
Where
what
we're
do,
going to use it and how we're going to teach it.
yeah, and what do we, like, I always want my students to know
Right.
what I want them to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna come back in a little bit and update this section,
Okay.
if that's okay, or,
Yeah. I'll go with that.
okay. So we're gonna have to update our key assessments and make sure that we tag the benchmarks, both formatively and summatively, that they align to. But the part that I just wanted to show really quickly was here, this learning plan part.
Yeah.
Because I was doing this all wrong before on
Okay.
this. So this is the true UBD place.
Okay.
So like at the end of our 10-week unit, what is our end task?
It's the argumentative stance speech that they're going to write and then, I don't know if perform is the right word, but that they're going to write and then give.
Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
highlight this so that we know
That's the end.
this is what we want them to be able to do.
Right.
And I know you've been working on that end task document, which is awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
So you'll put that in key assessments,
Okay.
but we won't do that yet.
Yeah.
So what we're supposed to be doing in this learning plan, and I know that everybody kind of plans differently, but is kind of making like a week by week, what do we want it to look like
Okay.
in order to get, like if we were gonna backwards design, what formatives, how could we break up this big stance speech
Right.
smaller, so by the time they get to the end, they're
Right.
more prepared.
Okay.
So like, I
So
know this,
obviously, we know that the stance speech is going to be about those key terms that we put above, which was identity, race, voice, and justice. So maybe we need to start by defining those words through maybe circle maps.
okay. So I'm gonna break this up and be like, week 1, week
Perfect.
2, like a progression of activities,
Which
and
is
then,
kind of how we already planned, but this will be easier for a teacher who's new.
right. So then we would take this and go to our slides, our lesson plan.
Right.
So really, it's starting with that curriculum framework, choosing which standards for this unit. This is our whole unit plan right here.
Right.
This is where we're going.
Right.
And then we'll take this and create our lesson plans.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.